think if Trump wins, we get more in the 400,000 range. And I think if Kamala wins, we stick down more in the $100,000 range. I think it's that drastic. With all this inflation, why isn't Bitcoin moving? But I would just remind people that September of 2023, last year. So really what we're seeing is this institutional money is really coming into Bitcoin, but also looking for institutional ways to play Bitcoin. And I think that makes up this second part of the phase.
With increasing interest from large investors and more money flowing into the market, we could be on the verge of exciting growth for Bitcoin in the next few months. Bitcoin moves in cycles, and right now, we're in a decisive 4-year period. Many people tend to focus on short-term price changes. But if we look at the bigger picture, Bitcoin has actually gone up 140% since last September, and 240% since September 2022. This shows that, over time, it's been doing really well. In a recent interview, seasoned entrepreneur and investor, Mark Moss, discussed the importance of Bitcoin's market cycles for predicting future growth. According to him, Bitcoin typically lags behind other assets, suggesting that once global equity markets truly begin to rise, we could see Bitcoin following suit within a few months. And with the presidential elections coming up, Mark believes that Bitcoin's price could eventually rise up to $400,000 if Trump wins. Make sure to stay until the end of the video to hear the full explanation behind his predictions. As we show you his clips, please give this video a like to show your support, subscribe for your daily dose of crypto news, and let's begin. Before we continue with the rest of the video, do check out Daily 5-Minute Crypto Newsletter with all the latest crypto and Bitcoin news. It's a fantastic analysis of on-chain crypto data and breakdowns, and the best part is it's absolutely free. They'll cover expert predictions, breakdowns of on-chain crypto data, and any breaking news you need to know, all in a nutshell. Click the first link in the description and enter your email to join over 50,000 others in becoming a better crypto investor right now.
We are 100% right in the middle of a traditional 4-year cycle. Yes, we are. I think a lot of people have gotten a little bit carried away. I think too many people are too zoomed in, expecting too much too soon, and they don't have the historical precedents to understand this. So I hear a lot of people talking about, well, Bitcoin's in the same range that it's been in the last 6 months. And with all this inflation, why isn't Bitcoin moving? But I would just remind people that September of 2023, last year, Bitcoin's up 140% since September of last year. And Bitcoin's up 240% since September of 2022. So I think, people zoom in too much and they're trying to understand movements on a weekly, monthly basis. But if you look at a yearly or a 24-month basis, it's crushing it. So I'd say it's right on track. Typically what we see when you look back through since 2013 and you look at all these different cycles that we're in, you see there's like 4 distinct phases of both liquidity, but also through the Bitcoin phase as well. And what we can see is there's typically a lag. That being said, we can see that typically from the time global liquidity breaks out, Bitcoin has about a 12 to 20 month lag. So from global liquidity breaking out, we can see that there's, again, about a 12-week lag before Bitcoin really starts taking off. So I think that puts us into Q4, end of Q4, potentially early 2025, before Bitcoin really starts hitting its stride, right? We really need to see, we see the regime change, we see the policies changing right now. But of course, this just happened last night with China. Like, we haven't seen the effects of it yet. So that's why we need the time. So give it about 12 weeks, and I think we'll see Bitcoin really taking off. And that is right in line with when we would expect it to move, sort of in this last part of the 4-year cycle. With this increase of liquidity that we'll expect to see, where do I see that moving into digital assets? That I'm big on cycles, and so political cycles and financial cycles. But there's a 50-year technological revolution cycle. I call it a quantum leap cycle. Maybe other people know it as a K-wave, a chondroitive cycle. But about every 50 years, we get a new technological revolution cycle. That's a cluster of technologies. And so right now we're entering another one. And the interesting thing about this, Paul, is that each of these 50-year cycles has 4 distinct phases. So you might have heard of the diffusion of innovation. It looks like a bell curve, and you have like the early adopters, the early majority, the chasm, and so forth. And so there's a four phase cycle how this rolls out, and you could measure it in what's called like an S curve. And it's important to understand what these 4 phases represent. So whether it was automobiles in 1908 or personal computers, it's always the same thing. So with automobiles, we had the first automobile. Within 3 years, there was 250 automobile manufacturers. The problem was the same thing. It couldn't scale. There was no roads, there was no gas stations, there's no tire shops. And so and there was no one to buy them. So they all went out of business. 3 remained and it kept going. Internet, we saw the same thing. And I believe that the first cycle in Bitcoin crypto decentralization was the same thing. Bitcoin was too slow and couldn't scale. And so we had this proliferation of altcoins that were faster, cheaper, more private, could do smart contracts and whatever else they could do. And that is a necessary part. It's a repeatable, dependable part of the first phase of a 50-year cycle. But what we're doing now, Paul, is a little bit different, right? When you look at on CoinMarketCap, there's 2.4 million crypto tokens today, 2.4 million. Since the fall of FTX, 8 have made a new all-time high priced in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. 8 out of 2.4 million. What we're seeing in phase 2, because we have this institutional push, as you're talking about, this institutional money, they're looking for real companies and real plays. And so the next part is Bitcoin derivative plays. And so these are Bitcoin publicly traded companies. So 8 out of 2.4 million crypto tokens have made a new all-time high, but the Bitcoin public plays like MicroStrategy is up 300% priced in Bitcoin since January of 2023. We have other public plays, whether the miners, CleanSpark, Mara, they're beating Bitcoin priced in Bitcoin. And so really what we're seeing is this institutional money is really coming into Bitcoin, but also looking for institutional ways to play Bitcoin. And I think that makes up this second part of the phase. And I think we're already starting to see all these, I think maybe about 15 companies in the last just month have announced that they're now putting Bitcoin on their balance sheets and they're becoming these Bitcoin companies like MicroStrategy. And I think that's the next big push.
Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, recently declared Bitcoin a legitimate asset on a CNBC segment. He recommends that everyone should consider adding Bitcoin to their investment portfolio. However, despite this endorsement, many people are still skeptical. Moss notes that it will take time to change these perceptions, but the trend toward acceptance is growing. According to Mark, we could see about 80% adoption of Bitcoin by 2030. This prediction is based on the S-curve analysis, which shows how new technologies are adopted over time. Currently, we are in a phase where major companies are starting to recognize Bitcoin's potential, but it takes time for them to make official decisions due to internal bureaucracy. Now, here are more clips of Mark Moss as he discusses further.
Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, is on CNBC telling people it's a legitimate asset. Everyone should put it in their portfolio, and here's why, and lays out the reasons. BlackRock just rolled out that paper last week, sent to all their investors, but yet there's all kinds of people that still think it's dumb internet magical money. And so it's going to take a long, even if they can't trust Larry Fink or believe Larry Fink or whatever, we have presidential candidates running on a Bitcoin platform. If they can't take that, it's going to take a long time to convince these people, and that goes back to the diffusion of innovation. Right. So we know that by 2030, we should get to about 80% adoption based off of an S-curve analysis. So, we're about 6 years away. I think it's going to escalate really fast, 6 years. As far as getting publicly traded companies on board, I think we'll see more and more, and it's sort of the gradually then suddenly. It takes a long time for a publicly traded company to make a decision, right? There's all kinds of bureaucracy, the board members, et cetera. Probably most of them are mostly older. So there's probably going to be, I would say, I see it happening over the next 6 years. I made a video, I think it was just released on my channel, but I basically showed how all the way back from Clinton, all the way through Biden, regardless of who was in office, the markets have gone up by about 50% in the first 3 years and 8 months. But when it comes to Bitcoin and digital assets, I think it's greatly different. So we have literally couldn't be more opposite people, in my opinion. So on one hand, we have Kennedy and Trump were both running on a pro-Bitcoin platform, saying that they would put Bitcoin on the reserve, the strategic Bitcoin reserve. We have bills already submitted by Senator Lummis, for example. Yep. On the other hand, we have the Kamala Biden regime, who has been extremely hostile to Bitcoin and crypto overall, extremely hostile. And literally, they have Elizabeth Warren heading that up, running on an anti-crypto platform. It couldn't be more opposite. And so what I would say is that I think regarding who wins, we have two drastic different outcomes, in my opinion. And if we look at sort of like a Bitcoin price chart, right, there's sort of the upper and lower bound of where we think it could be by the end of next year, right? Yep. And that varies widely, and it's about 100,000 to 400,000. And I think depending on who wins is which one of those we get. I think if Trump wins, we get more in the 400,000 range. And I think if Kamala wins, we stick down more in the $100,000 range. I think it's that drastic. I looked at what the Kamala Biden camp, the Kamala camp has said, and there wasn't really anything in there that was positive. It was kind of like, we kind of want innovation, and we want to create a culture that's like that like cultivates innovation. That's what she said. Nothing about like we were wrong about crypto. Like obviously, like admitting you're wrong might be a starting point. Like we are wrong to be so heavy-handed. We see that companies are good and legit, and we can run and they can run. Like nothing like that. It was like we'll be more accommodative of innovation. What does that even mean? So no, I would say absolutely not, Paul. Actions speak louder than words. Obviously, we have 4 years of what we've seen action, and nothing has been said, apologized, or changed that would make us think otherwise at this point. Yeah. So here's how I get to that number. So from an investor lens, we smart investors understand there's no such thing as certainties. There's only probabilities. So we look for odds, right? And we find where odds are in our favor, and we press into those. So here's how we look at this. Trump went and said that he's running on a pro Bitcoin platform. I was at Bitcoin conference speaking on the main stage. I was on the stage 2 hours before Trump. I didn't get to see him, unfortunately, but I listened to his talk. Now, he's not pro Bitcoin. He's really more pro freedom. He's really more pro freedom. He's like, I want you to be free to do your Bitcoin or your crypto or whatever it is that you want to do. So he has an accommodative platform. Let's just call it that. But what he did say is that, he's pro putting it on the strategic Bitcoin reserves. He thinks it could be instrumental to helping the U.S. pay off its debt. So he did say that. And we know that Senator Lummis has already submitted a bill to do that. And I believe he would create an environment to do that. Now, to the question that you've posed, I would maybe disagree with you a little bit. You said that Trump didn't follow through. I would see the opposite. So, for example, when he ran his first term, he said that for every one new regulation that was passed, he would remove 3. Well, he removed 5. He did pretty good. He said he'd build a border wall. I mean, he got the parts. He built some of it. He was stopped, but I mean, he was going through with his word. Sure. He said he was going to drain the swamp. Maybe the swamp didn't get drained, so whatever. But like, there was a lot of things that he did. They said he would do, and he did, and he did pretty well. So I don't see any reason to doubt. Like I said, the bill, Senator Lummis has already put the bill. It's already there. I don't see any reason to doubt that would go through. And so here's where the probabilities come into play, Paul. Right now, per Nate Silver, political pollster, he puts it at about a 50-50. I think it's probably way more lopsided in reality to Trump, but let's just call it 50-50. So there's a 50% chance that Trump wins. If Trump wins, there's probably a 90% chance, in my opinion, assign yours, but about a 90% chance that this bill would go through and maybe we would see Bitcoin on a reserve. Now, let's think about what this means, right? So El Salvador moved onto a Bitcoin standard. Mm-hmm. Now, El Salvador is one of the poorest countries in the world. They don't really influence anybody, but yet they are. President Bukele has been speaking with other leaders of other small nations like Omar and UAE, and they are now moving on to Bitcoin. So he has influenced them to move on Bitcoin. But if the U.S. with the dollar moved on Bitcoin, every other country in the world would be forced to move on to that because of competition. So a 50% chance he wins, about a 90% chance that goes through. And if the U.S. does it, every other country goes with it. And I think that demand pushes it to the 400,000 bound.
What about you? Do you think Bitcoin could eventually hit $400,000? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more important updates and discussions on Bitcoin and the crypto world. Thanks, and see you in the next one. For more Daily Dose Crypto News, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.